The big news right now in Melbourne is that Max King would appear to be out for 2023, which is a dagger in the heart in many ways for the Saints. I mean, they're a long-term program right now, but this is a real blow. Knee reconstruction, now shoulder reconstruction. He's a long, lanky, probably loose-limbed individual, but what a real blow to the Saints.
It is a massive blow, Gerard. Good evening to you and good evening to everyone. A very thought-provoking start. Once again, you can have your say on that. We've got a big show coming up. Looking forward to getting stuck into it. Just on Max King, is he the player from any team across the code that a team can least afford to lose? Because he had 93 shots on goal last year, and the talk about his inaccuracy was there, but he had the shots. He kicked 52-41. Next best was Tim Membry, so 40 more less shots on goal. Then you go to Higgins, then you go to Butler. And I would be a little bit concerned about the history of his body now, which is now starting to build up issues for a young player. 2018 in his draft year, he had the ACL, Gerard. 2019 didn't play an AFL game and had that nasty ankle surgery that finished his year. And whilst the last 3 years he's been reasonably sound, a little standard mishap in a training drill which requires a shoulder reconstruction, there's starting to be a body of work with his body that would have me really nervous for a player who is absolutely your marquee product, and your future hinges on him as a side.
Well, there's such things as loose limb players and, have ligaments that are not as strong or tensile as other players, but nevertheless, I mean, this is potentially just an innocuous situation. You can pop a shoulder pretty simply, but it was obvious that it was a serious one. They've gone in, well, they're about to have it reconstructed. And there's a couple of people on the line already texting in saying, who the hell has contest work in the second or third day of training? Well,
they all do.
They do get stuck into it pretty quickly these days. The balls come out, and we may not have been fully blown contact work. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but they do get stuck into it pretty early.
Yeah, Geoff Walsh was with the guys before on the run home, and he said it was just a bit of everyday contested work that did it. He expects him to be out for 16 to 20 weeks. Now, a Google search of this issue, and this would be your area more so than mine, but it's a 5 to 6 month injury, but that's when you come back. You don't come back like you left. I mean, it is so nasty. Just ask Wayne Carey and those that have done one. I played with Michael Wilson, who had a double reconstruction at once, and it was absolutely horrific to see what he went through. So yes, there's the time for him to come back, but to do that off no preseason, no contested work in the position that he plays, it is you almost, it's a strong comment, but you almost put a line through their finals chances on the back of this.
Well,
I do.
Yeah, well, he's a serious component of that. I mean, we were saying the same about his brother Ben King when he went down, but they found a way. But they had two really terrific recruits who stood up in that forward line.
Well, the Saints don't. I mean, Zane Cordy's not going to kick you 40 goals, Gerard.
No, they're going to have to really rework how they go about it, and they're going to be exposed for height. A lot of young players are going to be given opportunities. Paddy Ryder's not there, which would have been a pretty good start.
Because Geoff Walsh, as we said, spoke on the run home. He just had a few queries about how this can happen in December. Well, he cleared that up for the Saints fans this afternoon.
Well, as you said, Andy, it's going to require reconstruction. So, that's a long time on the sidelines in terms of, by the time he rehabs and full recovery, back to full training. It's a 16 to 20 week process, really, which is unfortunate.
How's he?
Look, he's very disappointed, obviously, because he's had a pretty strong off season. He's running and he's been in the club quite frequently. In the time I've been there, Max has been one of the people I've seen in there really regularly. Doing some goal kicking and his running's been strong. So really disappointing for him and for us, obviously too.
G'day, Geoff. How did it happen?
Oh, look, in a marking contested drill, you'd see these sorts of things, maybe 100 times at training. So it's not, it was nothing out of the ordinary per se, but just a contested piece of work that went awry for Max, unfortunately.
Did it? Sometimes you can go to training drills and games of footy, Geoff, and you can see, the collision, and you kind of get a sense, that's bad. Did it look to you guys who were sidelines or those who were sideline watching it? Did it immediately and apparently look like a bad one?
Oh well, yes and no, I suppose. He did go down and held his cradled his arm pretty quickly, but you just never know, if it's a stinger or whether it's something more serious. And so, as I say, he was in pain. There's no doubt, but unfortunately, it was at the worst end of the scale. So that horrible battle.
There you go, Geoff Walsh speaking to SEN this afternoon with Andy and Gazy. And I'm not sure there's a player in the competition who is more important to their side than Max King. And how they find their goals will be a mystery, and one that Ross Lyon probably putting his head together right now to find out how he's going to do that early in the season, Gerard.
I think it's going to take a lot of creativity and a lot of work by young individuals to bob up and fill that breach. There's no one stepping out in my mind. St Kilda fans, if you've got your side better than anyone else, who is going to fill the breach? How does Ross Lyon throw the magnets around to cover what is a huge loss? And it's a big loss for him personally as well. I mean, everybody gets setbacks in their career, but he's had a setback already with his knee reconstruction, and this one's going to knock him around for a period of time, and whether or not he plays again this year is going to be questionable.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the Saints fans. Yeah, and it will be. I'm sure he'll be back at some stage, but it's going to take some time. 1300 736 736 is the Harcourt's open line. Is he the most important player in the competition to his side? The other footy story doing the rounds today was a story in the Herald Sun by Jay Clark, is that the Western Bulldogs are going to lose the Good Friday fixture against North Melbourne. It's on the back of indifferent crowds, not disastrous, but 28,032 in the last 2 years, of course. North Melbourne have been smashed by 128 and 68 points respectively. The question I've got for you, Gerard, and North have campaigned hard and advocated hard for years, or decades really, for this game, and 2017 they were successful. Just because you campaign hard to get a certain fixture, do you have the monopoly on it? So why do the Western Bulldogs lose it, and why isn't it North Melbourne who lose it? Well,
it's North Melbourne's game, really. It's not the Western Bulldogs.
But should it be?
Well, it should be until the commission say it's not. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, just because you're as you rightly said, just because you campaign for something doesn't mean you've got it forever. But I think that the Kangaroos were given an opportunity at the wrong time. They were down at the bottom of the ladder. They were non-competitive. This time around, hopefully they're a much more competitive outfit. I'm sure they will be. And by the time 3 or 4 years ticks by, that they're going to be one of the more exciting sides in the competition, with so many young A-graders being drafted to that particular club through the middle of the ground. So, I mean, if you're given the opportunity to own something, I think you should be given a genuine opportunity, not just, a 1 or 2 year crack at it. But they need bigger crowds to turn up to justify that, to even having it any game on Good Friday. Well,
Carlton are going to be the team, reportedly, according to the Herald Sun, that will take the place. And once again, it's another free kick for the Blues, I think, in a marquee game. They get the season opener and on the back of some indifferent performances from them. But certainly it will improve the crowds. And you can join in whenever you like, as well as George has done from Taylor's Lakes. North on Good Friday. George, should they have a monopoly on the game?
Well, I don't see why not. I mean, 30 years that they've been fighting for it and no one wanted to touch it. Everyone said it was blasphemous to do it on Holy Day, and that's fair enough. But now that we've got it, everyone wants it. When Friday night came, we had it for so many years. We had it ups and downs. Now we've lost it. I mean, we invent it, and then we lose it because no one wants it, and because it's profitable for everyone. Everyone wants to take it off us. I mean, should Essendon and Collingwood have the Anzac Day because they're the two biggest clubs?
No, it's a debate worth having, and it was a question I posed to Gerard. I'm not sure you should. I certainly don't believe that Carlton and Richmond should have monopoly on the opening round of the season. Absolutely not. And your point is right. North when I was a kid, North owned Friday night. Every Friday night was a North game. That's certainly not the case now. The AFL wouldn't dare give North Melbourne more than one, if any, Friday night game. So I'm not sure, just because you've advocated for it and you've put a lot of work into it and it's important to you, you should own it. It should be reflective of your performance and the interest levels in the game. And if 28,000 keep turning up, then I'm not sure you do have a monopoly on it. But I appreciate your thoughts.
I think Adelaide. I think that Essendon and Collingwood should have a monopoly on Anzac Day. I think it works. It's great for the competition. It's great for them. I love Richmond and Carlton opening the season.
Why do you love that one?
Well, I just think it works. I think they're two big tribes that.
What's the measure of success? Just the crowds, or?
Well, I think the crowd is the major measure of success. But I also like last year having the grand final combatants go head-to-head on the Wednesday night, which I'm disappointed we haven't done that as well. I thought that worked particularly well. I'm not a fan of Good Friday. I don't think the numbers stack up. I mean, let's be honest. If you got 25,000 there on Good Friday, you're going to get 15,000 on a normal day if you had it on the Saturday. So we're talking 10,000 people. That doesn't justify, I think, changing it around. But people have voted at the commission level, so it's on, so you embrace it. But I think to justify having the game, you want 40,000 there. You want it to be a marquee game. And at the moment, it's not a marquee game. It's just a game on Good Friday.
Is that because it's North Melbourne, though?
It could well be, but it was North Melbourne and the Bulldogs. And the Bulldogs, they were runners up 2 years ago, and they were a pretty good side again last year. So they can draw a crowd. But the Kangaroos, they have not been a high-drawing side ever, really. But hopefully, when they get back to their best, and I think they're still a couple of years away from, progressing towards attacking finals footy, that they can drag a crowd. And I reckon the Blues, if they're playing the Blues, it'll be a sellout. So that's a win for me.
All right, Steve, what do you think? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good afternoon, fellas. Yeah, look, I'm a little bit sort of with Gerard there. I think this whole blockbuster date thing is a bit of a myth. I think it's highly dependent on the teams that are playing. I mean, North Melbourne and the Bulldogs have had the opportunity with this Good Friday game, and it's gone nowhere in terms of the crowds and the interest.
Isn't that my point though, Steve? Like you said, you're agreeing with Gerard, but isn't that's my whole point, that if it's not working,
but you've got to give it a time. I mean, you can't just drop it off after 2 or 3 years. Well, even 5 years. You've got to give it a time. And the one thing that does work is the eyeballs on the TV. So their sponsors are going to get, they're going to get a really good crack at getting good value for money on a given day. So there's more than just one element to it. But to me, they're going into an era where they can't help but go up the ladder. They're getting good draft picks.
Sorry, Steve, I cut you off. You can continue now.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're both making good points. But, I look at Anzac Day, Collingwood and Essendon. I mean, those two teams draw big crowds non-stop. And I think if that was taken off Collingwood and Essendon, I don't think, other teams are going to get the sorts of crowds that they do at that game. I think there would be nothing more embarrassing for Anzac Day when you're honouring, the fallen, that you have a 28,000 crowd. You were talking about the two teams.
But the fixture happens every year though. Like you just wouldn't schedule that. I mean, that it evolves. Teams go up and teams go down. Look at Hawthorn. So many examples of that. Now Carlton are relevant again, and we're all excited by what they can do. So they get the fixture. I mean, it's not as if we're doing the fixture 5 years out. We're doing it now. So you can easily schedule teams that would draw a crowd on Friday night, or Friday, I should say.
But last year you had Melbourne and the Bulldogs open the season, and especially after the grand final being in Perth, I went to the game actually because I went as a theatre goer for that night. They weren't my teams. That was very disappointing crowd.
50,
and then the following night when Richmond and Carlton played, guess what? The crowd, they had another 20,000 people there. So, I just sort of think that a blockbuster is really between the big four clubs in Melbourne. There's and if you want big crowds and you want to honour particular dates or events, that's what you've got to do.
Good on you, mate. Thanks for your thoughts on that. You can join in. The Harcourts open line is 1300 736 736, and you can talk about sport, but to talk to real estate, speak to the experts at Harcourts. And a few texts coming through on this one as well. Gerard, boys, the Saints had Anzac Day about 5 years ago. They stunk it up and got dumped the next year for the Bulldogs. Couldn't care less who North play as long as the Good Friday appeal schedule remains the same. On the back of Max King, if people thought Ross Lyon would be a negative coach, losing King is going to force his hand. It might do the opposite, in fact. It might force him to be pretty innovative with his attacking game plan.
Well, I don't buy the negative game plan from Ross Lyon. I think
No, you don't.
He built a game plan that worked for him. When he was coaching St Kilda, he was top four of attack and he was top four of defence a couple of years in a row from the stats that I've read. So I think that's been an oversimplified sort of comment that people have jumped on. And when he went to Fremantle, he made a grand final. He was negative when he had to be, but he was also attacking when he was able to be. So I expect he will have a very attacking game plan to a degree. But if you lose one of your A-grade players, you have to change to some degree.
Take it easy on North Corns. You're dirty on North because your old man, the star of South Australia, could only get 7 games at North in 1979. Champ. So he's champ me there. And why not start each club in their own state? Imagine a 2-week leading to the showdown, for example. And Dean's a little bit with you, Gerard. He says Good Friday should be 0 games, a day off for all people, including footballers. 1300 736 736 to have you say. We've got Bruce on the line.
What's your thoughts on that, Corns?
I think I'm a fan of more sport. I'm a fan of Christmas Day sport. I'm a fan of Good Friday sport, but I'm not overly religious, Gerard, and I'm sympathetic to those that are.
But even if there's not a religious reason, I mean, one of the problems we've got with crowds is that through Easter, half the people go to the Bellarine Peninsula and half the people go to the Mornington Peninsula, and I'm sure that detracts from a lot of people turning up at the footy.
But you still got to get the 9 games out scheduled over that weekend, regardless. So I think it works. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that. Bruce is in Sunshine. What do you think, Bruce?
Yeah, I think Gerard hits the nail on the head. You've got to leave the Essendon and Collingwood Anzac game alone. I think it was brought in, from Kevin Sheedy back in the day. Yep. Not to say they own the day, but I think they've done the day justice with the crowds they're attracting each time they have it. And, you can say that North Melbourne have been in poor form, if you like, in the last years. Like, you look at Essendon, they haven't even won a final in 20 years, and they're still drawing the big crowds to that game and putting on a show, most of the time in that 20 years. So the games are usually...
What about the season opener?
Season opener, yeah, I think, it's only recently that Richmond and Carlton have owned that game. Richmond obviously being recently successful, have started to draw a crowd again, since winning these premierships. I think, so they probably have deserved it now, but I think if it was maybe 10 years ago, it probably wouldn't draw the crowds that it has now. There's a lot of bandwagon Richmond supporters, as we know, that have jumped on board.
That may be the same, but it's worked. It's worked just about every time from my memory. I look forward to it. I love going to that particular game. And it's been Carlton that's been down on the bones of their backside over the last decade or so, and yet they've still generally produced good performances on that game. I know they've lost a lot, but last year they finally cracked it and knocked off the Tigers. And it'll be interesting to see who people tip this time around in round 1, Kane, if they've got their both got their best sides in, because both look like they're going to figure prominently at the end of the season.